Hi guys, it's Nicolette again. So today I'm doing a video from an article I actually read. I was flying into Cape Town this morning and I was actually flying Kulula, and I saw an article in the Kuluma magazine, a very interesting article titled Pretty on Paper, and I was like, I want to read this. What does this mean? And they're actually talking about the pros and cons of buying off plan. And I was thinking, I thought back to a story that a girl had sent me. Well, it was an inquiry and she was looking for help. Her and her husband had bought a house off plan, and they were promised all sorts of things. They were told they don't need to pay transfer fees, and it all went belly up, and eventually they had to pay transfer fees, and eventually the house wasn't even built. So I thought, you know what, let's do a video on this because it's actually one of the most important things, because it's really attractive to buy off plan. We all want to buy off plan because, you know, you get to live in a brand new house that nobody else has ever lived in. You don't have to worry about maintenance and paying special levies for maintenance because everything is delivered to you as it should. But is that really always, you know, the best thing to buy off plan? Not really, because sometimes there are issues with buying off plan. But let's talk about the cons before we get into the, let's talk about the pros before we get into the cons. So obviously the pros are the fact that you're not going to be paying any transfer fees. But again, in this country, if you were going to buy something under 900,000 rand, you were never going to be paying transfer fees anyway. So, or transfer duties, maybe let's leave it at that. But I mean, yeah, that's reality, is that you're saving close to 7-10% from not paying your transfer duties. I think the other biggest pro is the fact that the deposit kind of lessens, where you find yourself in a situation where the bank is not willing to give you 100% loan. You do find yourself in a situation where they say they need 10% upfront, which is your deposit. So in this case, you're paying, most of them average a maximum of 20,000 rand that you would be paying in terms of a deposit. So that's definitely a pro if you do not have, the right amount of money that you have saved in terms of allocating that to your deposit. And then I think the other part of it really is just, again, it's moving into a brand new house where nobody else has lived in. You're the first person to live in that house. But I think also, for me, the most key thing is that you're buying the house at the value of that day. So basically, if the house is 700,000 rand, you're buying it at that value. And what's nice about it is that while the house is being built, it obviously is going to appreciate, which is what a lot of people do when they buy off plan. They buy off plan and then they sell the house before they even have to move in to somebody else, and they actually make a profit of that. So because you're buying it at the price of that day, you basically, the appreciation you can collect as profit. So that's also one really great thing. But you have to now obviously find a person to buy it from you, or else it does not count, right? But there are obviously cons, and some of the biggest cons, as I said, from this girl's story, is that you find yourself in a situation where the developer disappears on you, or what happens usually is that banks don't actually give the money off to the developer before there's actually been at least 90% sale of the apartments. So there is obviously a risk that if that does not happen, the bank doesn't finance this thing, and now the developer is sitting with a bunch of plans that are never going to materialize. So it's very important that you go and look for an off-plan development that is being done by a very reputable developer. I always say, for me, Samakon is the absolute best. I love Balwin, what Balwin is doing currently. Even though it's a lot of houses in one complex, it really does sometimes look like glorified squatter camps because it's a lot. But without offending anyone, but it's a lot. But they've got great amenities. They've got great amenities in the complex. They come with great modern features, and they give you the furniture, the appliances. So that's obviously an advantage an advantage. But a great developer is really something that you should be looking out for. More than anything, go look at their past projects, because that will indicate to you whether or not this is somebody that you can trust. Yes, there's no guarantee that just because they've built something before and they're reputable, that their project will actually materialize. But at least it gives you some sort of comfort, knowing that this developer kind of knows what they're doing. I think the other thing that you should be looking for is that they are registered with a council, that this plan is not just something that this person came up with and just decided to start selling off plan. You need somebody who obviously has an idea of what they're doing and they know the regulations that obviously need to be followed in terms of building any type of complexes. The other thing is look at the structure of I would call it the financial structure or the selling structure. So there's a thing called a plot and plan. And basically a plot and plan is that you are buying a plot from the developer and then you wait for them to actually build. The other thing that structure is the turnkey, and the turnkey basically means that you're putting in a deposit, and with your deposit you guarantee your apartment and you only pay the balance when you get given now your key and the transfer is gone through. Another thing to be very cautious about, which is a lot of people miss out on, is does your transfer date and the day you actually take occupation align? Because if it doesn't and your transfer is not done immediately but the house becomes available, you might find yourself paying occupational rent to the developer. So that's also something that you need to be looking out for. These are things that will assist you in facilitating a sale of plan in terms of property. But also, people get duped by the silliest things because we don't read, number one. Sorry, I was going to say don't get duped by a real estate agent, because real estate agents are very good at their jobs. Their job is to sell. And if a real estate agent says to you, this is a good investment, it doesn't always necessarily mean it's a good investment. A good real estate agent does not qualify a great developer. So it's very important. And also try and find out who is actually building this complex. Is it the developer himself or is he subcontracting to somebody else? Because that is going to be something that is going to be very important to you in knowing who holds the guarantees. So that's also something that you need to be definitely looking into. So the article written by Catherine Graham in the Kuluma magazine says, what questions should you ask the developer? So she's got 4 questions that you should be asking the developer before you buy off plan. Number 1, what have you developed and built previously? Again, as I said, for me, the likes of Samarkand, Renico, the likes of Balwin, those are good developers because you can actually see their building standing. I mean, if you look at Amsterdam in Olivedale, it's built by Balwin. If you go to Douglasdale, the likes of the likes of Via Polino, those are built by Samarkand. So it's worthy looking at a developer who's done something before and you can actually see the building standing. And also what's important, remember that if you're buying off plan, the developer really matters because the developer is going to pick who's going to manage that estate. And it's very important that you also find somebody that really cares about your building, because once you have bought into sectional title, it becomes your house. But remember that it's only your house inside. The outside still belongs to the estate. So the people who are taking care of it are taking care of a piece of your investment. And for you to be able to sell, the outside of the area still needs to be taken care of. So you still need to get a really great real estate manager. That's really important. The second question that you should be asking, who's the financial institution or commercial bank who's transferring and who are the transferring attorneys? This is really just for your comfort. Find out who is the bank, and it's really, for me, it's really just because there's really nothing much you can do about it. If a developer has picked a certain bank, you don't really have much of an impact on it, but it's one of the questions that you should ask. Then what is the level of pre-sale that is needed, and is everything defined in a contract which includes the size and unit of the rooms? Because what happens sometimes is that on the plan, the house might be a certain size, but by the time that it's developed and it's actually built and you've bought into this thing, now all of a sudden a 60 square meter 2-bedroom apartment has now shrunk to 40 square meters. So it's really important that you find out these things. Also the size of bathrooms. That's where they always try and take a chance, these developers, is that they make the bathroom smaller than what it was on plan. So you need to always check every single thing and make sure that everything that you were told before the sale is exactly what you are seeing in front of you once it's actually developed. And the last question to ask is, what is the guaranteed completion date and what are the proposed levies and rates? So just again, just to give yourself a little bit of comfort. If the completion date or occupation date should really coincide with the transferring date of the title deed, because you would ideally want to move in, or at least have somebody moving in, so that you can start collecting some rent. Because if transfer it takes too long, then you're kind of losing out, so that's also really, really important. And find out what are the proposed levies and rates, just so you can get an understanding and start planning in terms of your profits, especially if it becomes a rental apartment. You'll kind of get an understanding of how much you should be collecting in terms of rent, so that you can cover your levies and your rates. Mwah.